So if LSU is to go to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama, they'll need some guys to step up because on Monday, Brian Kelly says in the middle of the press conference, like, we were a good 12, 13 minutes into this media session before somebody asked Brian Kelly, hey, so what's the deal with the injuries? And then he says, oh, yeah, Mekhi Wingo is going to be out for the season, or at least for 6 weeks. That's a big deal. Like, that's a huge deal. This guy was an All-American, All-SEC player coming into the season. And the way it was presented was as if he's kind of an afterthought nobody, which is just wild to me because Mekhi Wingo is a huge part of this defense. He's a huge part of the defensive line. And it's a shame because the injury comes right before your biggest game of the season and you want to be at full strength. You'd obviously want to have an All-American on the field for a top 15 game. I mean, that's just obvious, right? But it looks like they're not going to have him because Wingo has surgery. There's a chance he could play, maybe deep into the postseason. 6 weeks is what, about 2 months? So it's possible, unlikely though, and even if he plays, what are you going to get out of him, right? So that's a bummer. Hard to replace a guy like that, especially on a defense that we've talked about all season has some pretty, big problems, mostly on the back end, not necessarily in the front end, but it's not good. Luckily, though, LSU recruited the transfer portal very well, and they've got guys that can step up, step in, and try to replace or maybe try to play at the same level to what Wingo had done this season. And he hadn't been putting up All-American numbers. Nobody on the defensive line has really put up big stats, right? Like 5 sacks, 50 tackles, 6 TFLs. Nobody's really done that because of the nature of what this defense is. It's a defense that doesn't have a great secondary, and it's hard for defensive linemen to make a difference when teams pass the ball a lot, when they can just kind of get the ball out quickly. There's no chances for sacks and whatnot. So who can replace and step in for Mekhi Wingo? I think the first guy we got to talk about is Jordan Jefferson, the West Virginia transfer, not the former LSU quarterback. This guy's been really good this year, and he's really flown under the radar because he's been playing behind Mason Smith. He's been playing behind Mekhi Wingo. But here's a stat you probably didn't know. Who leads the LSU defense in tackles for loss, the defensive line? It's not Mekhi Wingo. It's not Mason Smith. It's Jordan Jefferson from West Virginia. That's who leads the defensive line in CFL. He's got 4.5 on the year, 21 tackles and a sack. And he's a rotational guy. He will come in for Mekhi Wingo. He'll come in on the heavy sets where LSU maybe has 3 bigger linemen and 1 defensive end, and then maybe Harold Perkins is on the edge too. They've got guys in that room. And a guy like Jordan Jefferson is tailor-made to step in and do what Mekhi Wingo has done this season. Be a player that can get pressure from that D-tackle position. Be a player that will feast and stop run plays, will stuff gaps and help the linebackers out. So they're good. It's a tough loss losing a guy like Wingo because now, the guy that would come in for him has to play. And then when Jordan Jefferson needs a break, you got to bring somebody else in like Jacoby and Guillory or a younger player that maybe isn't ready for that kind of a workload. But they're going to have to be ready because there's no choice. You got to run somebody out there to stop the run and get pressure on Jalen Milroe. So, as I said, Jacoby and Guillory could be another player that steps in. He's very experienced. He's played at LSU for a couple of years, has been a rotational guy at times this year. So you've certainly got pieces to use. And I got to say, this defensive end room has been really good this year, in my opinion. Like, again, not putting up crazy stats, but when you watch the film, they're consistently affecting opposing quarterbacks, forcing them to move around in the pocket, forcing them to get rid of the football. Guys like Braden Swinson, the Oregon transfer, has been solid off the edge, getting pressure, and Paris Shan has been a disruptor for the same reasons, but he also has a knack for swatting passes down and stuff like that. So you're not dead if you're the defensive line without Wingo. You've got pieces both inside and outside, and you can still get pressure on this Alabama offensive line. It helps that you still got Mason Smith because people are like, oh, why isn't Mason Smith producing? Well, it's because he gets double-teamed every play. He's playing basically nose tackle for this defense, and he still finds a way to make plays. He will in this game too. And one thing that's very important to keep in mind, even with Wingo out, this Alabama offensive line is Swiss cheese. Like, they cannot pass protect for the life of them. They are one of the worst pass-protecting offensive lines in the country. 126th, tied with Northwestern, out of 132 FBS teams or whatever the number is. So that's really going to help out your defensive line. It's really going to help out the cornerbacks as well. in LSU's secondary, if you can get pressure and affect Jalen Milroe, affect this passing game, if you can consistently get men in that backfield and get some sacks. So the point here is no Wingo, not no problem, but it's not that big of a problem because you have pieces to use. You've got a solid defensive line. What they have to do now is prove that stat about Alabama's offensive line, about Alabama's pass protection to be true, and get after Jalen Milroe.